Okay, so this unit that we're beginning today is going to be dealing with American imperialism. And in this time, we're going to talk about the acquisition that the American government had of properties such as Hawaii, Alaska, the Philippines, and also our role in expanding our economic interests in South America, Asia, and pretty much all over the world. So, first thing we're going to find about American imperialism is why it grew. So the first thing we want to do is we want to define what imperialism actually is. So why does imperialism grow? Imperialism as a concept is this idea that a nation that wants to grow is going to have to acquire more property, it's going to have to acquire more land, it's going to have to acquire more people, and it's going to have to acquire specifically more resources. Now, imperialism also implies that stronger nations will attempt to create empires by dominating weaker ones. So a classic example of this would be, not so much an American example, but a classic European example would be England went around as an empire and they conquered smaller nations, weaker nations. Not necessarily smaller nations, they may have had a lot more people, but they were not as developed. Military was not as much of a resistant threat to the British that came in. So for instance, nations like India would have been under the control. They would have been a colony of England for a long time. So that's basically what imperialism is all about, is the idea of a powerful nation is going to do everything it can to force its will upon a weaker nation. Now, for the United States, what does that look like? Do we have colonies? No, we don't. We were a colony, and so we didn't want to make that same mistake. What we do is we have territories. And so throughout American history, there's a lot of different nations or parts of the nation that would end up being territory. So Alaska starts out as a territory. Hawaii starts out as a territory. Here, even in the contiguous, the lower 48 of the United States, there were times where New Mexico was a territory. You had California was territory for a time. There's Oregon was a territory. There's a lot of different areas that are territories, meaning that they are in the possession of the federal government. They're under the protection of the United States government, but they are not guaranteed statehood. They are not given any sort of government authority to basically govern themselves, sort of like states do today. And they're kind of on their own. And government can go in there and they can do things there, but for the most part, it's kind of the people who are in there are taking their lives into their own hands with minimal amount of government protection or authority over them. Okay, so this particular image here, this is a political cartoon. Take a second to kind of illustrate what you got going on up here. 1898, this is an important year. We're going to talk about 1898 a lot in this unit because it is a major year as far as the movement for America to be imperialized. Spanish-American War happens in 1898. We win the Spanish-American War in 1898, and because we win the Spanish-American War, we begin to acquire a lot of land in different places. Now, this image right here is demonstrating a couple of different things. You've got Manila, you've got Ladonis, I think. I can't pronounce that one particularly correctly. Then you got Hawaii over here. You've got Samoan Islands. It's hard to read. Handwritten, difficult to understand sometimes. Over here you got Puerto Rico, or as it says here, Puerto Rico. Eastern areas of the United States and all that kind of stuff too. So, 10,000 miles from tip to tip. The argument is that the wings of the American eagle are spreading out 10,000 miles. It's covering so much land. It's covering all these different things. Also interesting to note, you've got this little symbol right here, basically demonstrating how much we've grown. By 1898, we were here not too long ago, and here we are, 1898. We're stretching all the way across. We've got so much land, so much authority, so many things are growing. Now, be thinking about the fact that, this eagle looks rather vicious, does it not? I mean, it looks kind of like it's angry, it looks kind of like it's warlike. One of the things and one of the accusations, one of the detractors of our imperialistic notions, our plans to grow an empire of the United States, is that it's going to require military. It's going to require a powerful military. Some people think that's an important thing to have. Other people are fearful of that because a powerful military means somebody wants to go to war. And war tends to be an expensive and costly endeavor in terms of lives, money, just a lot of different things. So a lot of people may look at this and see angry eagle means bad things. Others may see angry eagle means don't mess with our stuff, we'll protect it. So a lot of different ways to look at what imperialism does. Now, in imperialism, what you've got is one empire is powerful. Two empires are going to be in competition because they want to create each other. Each one of them wants to be an empire. One empire is going after resources that it needs. Okay? Every empire is going after resources that it needs. Now, what happens is that typically people need the same kinds of things. They need food, they need shelter, they need to feel safe. Okay? All these things are some things that they need. Typically, resources manifest themselves in similar ways. Countries are going to need food, countries are going to need timber, countries are going to need oil. All these resources and a lot of other things, these things become coveted resources. Now, if you have an empire and you control these smaller countries, you have access to the resources that those things provide. Now, if you're a growing country and you have outstretched the boundaries of your traditional country, like the Americans were at that point in late 1800s, you begin to need more resources. And you begin to look at other places and go, well, I don't really want a colony, but man, they grow some really nice bananas down in South America. Let's find a way to get involved in that. Okay, let's find a way to get those pineapples off of Hawaii. Okay, that's not so nefarious or not so sneaky about it the way they do it, but it just comes across as them wanting to find a way to get a hold of that stuff. They look for opportunities, open doors for things to happen. Now, they also need military bases. As an empire grows, you begin to spread your influence across the world. Like for instance, right now we've got Hawaii is our state that I believe, Hawaii and Alaska, both are pretty far out. Now, Hawaii is also pretty close to a lot of other countries, and it's kind of out there by itself. Do we have a military base on Hawaii? Yeah, we do. So, what we know from this is that we need different territories in different parts of the world to protect our assets, to protect those areas that are under our control, our territories that we have. Now, we do have military bases. Even today, we have military bases on foreign soil. We have military bases, for instance, in Germany is a very famous one. We have military bases. That's a pretty permanent one there in Germany, a couple of them actually. And then we also have military bases in the Middle East. We have some military bases in Asia. And so these military bases are there to basically not force imperialism on the world as it once was, but to protect our assets that are there and to protect our interests in that area, which means trade that we have with them and any sort of involvement we have with those countries. Now, we also see as reasons for imperialism competition to create an empire. So we're growing as an empire because we want to create an empire. We want more stuff. We need more stuff. We need more resources. We're a growing country. Remember we talked about manifest destiny. We got to spread out and fill out the continent because we're running out of space. We need more food. Well, we filled out that space. We still need more food because we're growing bigger. We got to go for more resources. Need military bases. Protect ourselves. Further out we are protected, harder it is for the bad guys, the enemies, to get into us. And the last one is kind of the one where we get to be a little bit of that manifest destiny coming back up. It is our duty to spread Western blessings. Now, Western blessings typically means this: Christianity, especially in 1898. Our belief was that we want to spread our version of Christianity, American version of Christianity. But it also translates into we wanted to spread, at this time, democracy. So we believe that we're going to provide, and specifically in the case of the Philippines, which we'll talk about more later on, we wanted to provide savages with sophisticated democracy, sophisticated religions. And it doesn't always go well, but the belief in the minds of people that are pro-imperialists say, we've got to spread this great thing we've got here in America to the rest of the world. Now, the problem is going to come up. What happens when the rest of the world does not want to have those blessings that we are offering them? Okay, so as we expand the United States interest, one of the big principal documents that we're going to look back to say this is why we can do this is called the Monroe Doctrine. Now, the Monroe Doctrine is written a long time before this, earlier in the century. This is 1898 is when we really start using it. Late 1890s is when we really start trying to pull back on and say, hey, look, we're going to use the Monroe Doctrine. But the Monroe Doctrine actually is earlier in the 1800s. It warned other nations to stay out of the Western Hemisphere. North and South America. Okay, so you'll see here on this map that we've got going up here, we're kind of sitting over southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, California, and then down here we got Mexico. So on the map in the background. So what we got here is we're wanting other nations to stay out of North and South America to protect our interests. Now the Monroe Doctrine basically said that this hemisphere over here, North America, South America, Central America, this belongs to us, the United States. And when we say people need to keep out, we were specifically, at the time of the Monroe Doctrine, telling Europe to stay out. Okay, Europe, leave us alone. Get out of our business. This is our part of the world now. You messed it up. We had to fix it. Here we are. That's kind of the attitude of the Monroe Doctrine. That's kind of what it says. Now later on, in 1904, we will add to the Monroe Doctrine something called the Roosevelt Corollary. The Roosevelt Corollary basically says that America takes on policing the world. Okay, it is our job to take care of that. It's our job to enforce democracy. It's our job to enforce human rights. It's our job to enforce all these things. This is a doctrine that, although we don't really call it that anymore, we don't really talk about the Roosevelt Corollary specifically anymore. Whenever we go into a place, whenever we go into, for instance, I know we've had some issues with Syria. Right now we're currently, as I say this, in October of 2014, we are currently going after a group called ISIS. And ISIS being a terrorist group that is currently beheading reporters from the United States and from, I believe, the United Kingdom as well, and making threats on and attacks on Iraq, a country that we have helped reset up and provide democracy for. They're going after that, and basically we're kind of calling back to the Roosevelt Corollary at this point and saying, look, it's our job to police this. It's our job to take care of these bad guys who are hurting innocent people. Now, Roosevelt would have a very famous phrase that he used called speak softly and carry a big stick, and becomes big stick diplomacy. And big stick diplomacy is basically a common version of the Roosevelt Corollary. So the idea here is that the America's job is to become the world's police, and we have to take care of things. And we're especially the world's police here in the Western Hemisphere in 1904. Now there's a couple things that will happen with Roosevelt as a president, progressive president, that we'll talk about in progressive era, but one of those things is basically he takes on the job of trying to prevent a war between Germany and Colombia, I believe. And basically what happens is that they owe Germany, Colombia owes Germany some debts, and Germany shows up with warships to collect, so we send some warships down and basically call their bluff. It's kind of an interesting deal. Doesn't make a lot of history books because nothing really ever happened, but it was a really masterful use of Roosevelt Corollary of, we're going to protect our people, don't take advantage of them. Now, expanding our interest in the United States, in 1867, we grab Alaska. Okay, so we get a hold of Alaska. Obviously, we're going to find out 1898, Klondike gold rush right near Alaska. We needed lots of gold in that area. That's going to be a big growing thing for Alaska. We also get, in 1867, the Midway Islands. Now, the Midway Islands are important today. Were important in World War II, major scene of a battle in World War II, a big turning point in World War II. But we get the Midway Islands in 1867 as well. They're pretty far out. That's what they look like. Midway Islands right there. These islands are a strategic point for us. We talk about the military. We need to have military bases to protect our interests right here. Okay. Expanding U.S. interests, Hawaii. In 1898, we acquire Hawaii. Now, Queen Liliuokalani, can't say that very fast. She disliked foreign intervention. Hawaii in general didn't want us to be very involved. But in 1893, without the presidential authority, we had some troops in the area, and basically the troops helped to overthrow the Queen. And when they overthrew the Queen, she had to abdicate. Abdicate is a big word for meaning to step down from the throne. Sanford Dole, this guy right here with the big old beard, or as I call it, the bifurcated beard, because it's two. Sanford Dole was the first and only president of the Republic of Hawaii, and then he was a territorial governor. He was sort of behind the scenes on the whole overthrow of the Queen kind of deal, and he just happened to be in the area in time to become this guy. Yeah, he is no relation, or he's no direct relation. He's not the actual Dole guy, like Dole pineapples. I think they're distant relatives, but he is not that Dole. So, why do we expand? Economic growth. U.S. businesses wanted expansion to solve the problem of overproduction. So for example, the United Fruit Company invested and gained political influence in some Central American nations. These nations are called banana republics. What happened was we had corporate government, basically, in some very small South American countries. Remember I mentioned earlier we like bananas, we want to get some bananas. Right here, you've got the United Fruit Company investing money down there. Now, because the governments were rather corrupt and backwards, what essentially happened is the United Fruit Company basically became the government of this nation. And they didn't improve a whole lot on the whole governmental structure. Things were goofy, things didn't work right, corruption ran rampant. Obviously the businesses were making a big profit, so as long as they were making profit, they were okay with it. So the idea here is this. We've heard the term Banana Republic. It is not a clothing store in this sense. You may have heard of Banana Republic as a clothing store. That comes from here. But when we talk about Banana Republics today in a government setting, we're talking about Banana Republics being organized governments that are basically run as a joke. They're not very good. Things don't work right, and it's a bad mistake. Good financially for these companies, but not so great otherwise. Now, United Fruit Company, right here, bananas with a gun. I'm apparently thinking that that means they were protecting their interests. Eventually becomes Chiquita Banana today. So United Fruit Company is now Chiquita Banana. Now, what we have here is some validation of America's imperialism policies. You can see in 1870, 1880, the dollars over here represented, this is how much American dollars on exports were. They were pretty small. Less than probably $1 billion worth of imports. Kind of trumps along here, 1890. Now in 1898, remember, we start acquiring all these properties like Hawaii, the Philippines. We've got Alaska. We're really starting to utilize Alaska now. We double, more than double. We're almost 2 million. By 1910, imperialism, well, we're not really adding a lot more territory to it, but now we're fully utilizing the territories that we have. By 1910, we're up here to almost 2 million. 10 years later, 1920, look at how much we've grown. We're up to $8 billion. We have 4 times in 10 years. Now, there's a significant thing to that. What is another reason why our imports have increased so much in those 10 years? If you said World War II, you were wrong. It's World War I. World War I, 1914, 1917, we were exporting a ton of goods to Europe and all over the rest of the world to provide for them while we're not in the war. And even after the war, because we weren't as damaged, our infrastructure wasn't as damaged as the European infrastructure, we are still helping people out well into that time. So we actually export a ton of stuff during this time. And imperialism, by us getting those military bases, by getting us those ports in these faraway places, makes it easier for us to transport those goods. It gives us a way station, a stopping point to be able to move things out.